Huh? Why would the CO scout someone like you, a college school dropout, stop lying?
Amy's attitude showed that she didn't believe me at all. Honestly, I hesitated to say this. I might be seen through a biased lens. I'm engaged to the CEO's daughter. We're getting married soon. Right now, avoiding getting fired takes priority. Therefore, I revealed the secret I had been keeping. However, she said,
Keep the jokes to your face.
it ended in a sneer. 1 month later, when I invited her to my wedding, she turned pale. My name is Eric Anderson. I'm in my 20s, and I recently started working at a company. I've always been good at observing and analyzing things. According to my parents, ever since I was little, I would ask questions about everything, like, what's that? And, why does that happen? I've been freelancing for many years. I'm kind of nervous. I've always worked alone, doing things freely.
Oh, Eric, you'll be fine.
However, due to certain circumstances, I started working at my current company last month. The reason was my fiancée, Karen Gordon.
But I'm really glad you joined the company, Eric. My brother also said he's grateful.
We're getting married soon, and the preparations for the wedding are progressing steadily. She asked me to work as a full-time employee there.
I know you can manage fine as a freelancer, but if you don't mind, I'd like you to join the company.
She said that to me. I had been freelancing, but I figured it wouldn't be so bad to settle down and work at a stable job. With that in mind, I joined the company to fulfill her wish. Upon joining, I was assigned to the corporate strategy department. This is said to be the core of the company, and everyone around me is an elite college graduate.
Hey, assistant, make copies of these documents before the meeting.
My boss is Amy Miller, a female manager who graduated from a prestigious university. Amy is highly capable, leading many team members, and she's well regarded within the company. However, she has looked down on me from the start, treating me as nothing more than a person who runs errands.
The only work you can do is probably just errands.
But
Be grateful you're even entrusted with errands.
that's what she said. With a wry smile at her attitude, I spent my days running around doing errands. The reason why Amy looks down on me, it's because I'm a college dropout. It's not like I chose to drop out of college. I did go to college, but halfway through my second year, I was in a car accident and had to be hospitalized for an extended period. As a result, I had to repeat a year. By the time I was discharged, my classmates had moved on to their third year, leaving me behind. Hey, can I quit college?
Eric. Yeah, you don't have to force yourself.
Yeah, it wasn't your fault at all.
I did repeat the second year. However, I couldn't get along with my new classmates. When I went back, all my familiar classmates had moved on. New classmates probably felt awkward around me, and I can understand if they didn't know my situation, they might jump to the wrong conclusions. I was left with them who kept their distance from me because of my appearance. I had a scar on my face from the accident. Although it's not very noticeable now, back then, it was quite visible and painful to look at. Because of that, people avoided me. All these things piled up, and I eventually dropped out. I can't keep going like this. I need to start with what I can do. After that, I continued to stay home for a while. Even though it wasn't my fault, I felt out of place. I had decided to go back, but in the end, I dropped out. I was stuck in that uncomfortable, gloomy feeling, but I knew I couldn't continue like that, so I made up my mind. I started looking for work I could do from home, and at first, I struggled. Over time, I built a career and worked as a self-employed individual for many years.
You're more than welcome here, Eric. We're counting on you now.
Thanks to my accomplishments, I was able to get a job. I guess I owe you as well.
That's not true. You were welcomed because of your own abilities. Besides, I'm the one who should be thankful. Because of you, Eric, I'm still alive today.
Actually, I met her due to the car accident. Karen was a classmate at the same college. Watch out.
Huh?
A car ran a red light, heading straight toward her as she was about to cross the crosswalk with her friend. She was so engrossed in her conversation at the time that she noticed too late. Instinctively, I pushed her out of the way and got hit instead.
Eric, thank goodness you woke up. I'm so sorry. It's all my fault.
At one point, my life was apparently in danger. When I regained consciousness, she was there, crying and apologizing to me.
Eric, how are you feeling?
Thank you for always being here, Karen. But you come to see me every day, are you sure it's okay?
It's fine. I come because I want to.
After that, she stayed by my side, saying I was her lifesaver, and she took care of me. Eventually, we began to grow closer to each other.
I understand why you blame yourself, Eric, but maybe that's exactly why you need to change. If you stay like this, you'll just keep suffering.
When I dropped out of college and shut myself in, she kept encouraging me and helped me get back on my feet. After I confessed my feelings to her, we started dating. Karen, will you spend the rest of your life with me?
Yes, with pleasure.
After some years of dating, I proposed to her on the day she graduated from college. She nodded with tears in her eyes. Since then, we've started living together, and now we spend every day together.
So, how's work? Is Amy treating you well? I heard she's really talented.
Oh, yeah, I'm still getting there.
Something happened, didn't it? I'd like to hear about it.
Karen said that, and I started venting about Amy. She listened patiently, occasionally nodding along.
I see. That sounds tough. Do you want me to talk to them?
No, it's fine. It hasn't even been a month since I joined. I'll gradually prove my abilities.
I love that you're always striving, but don't push yourself too hard.
I smiled and thanked her for her support. She could probably make things move quickly if she wanted to. But I wanted to earn recognition through my own efforts first. Talking to you, Karen, made me feel more positive. Thank you.
I'm glad I could help.
Her beautiful smile lit up as she responded to my words. I found myself wanting to marry her as soon as possible.
Hey, Eric, how are you doing?
One day, after placing some files in the storage room on Amy's orders, I was greeted by Executive Vice President, Ken Gordon. Well, I'd say I'm doing all right.
I see. How are things with Amy? She's quite outstanding, so I think you can learn a lot from her.
His words made me smile wryly. On my first day at the company, he had shown me around the office.
And this is Amy Miller, the manager here.
I was introduced to Amy as my direct supervisor. When I first met her, I was shocked by the disdainful look she gave me. After he said,
All right, I'll leave the rest to you.
And walked away.
Why did they assign such an undereducated person as my team member?
Amy didn't even try to hide her disdain, speaking to me with obvious irritation. It seemed she had looked at my resume and realized I was a college dropout.
You're not fit for the work here. But be grateful that I'm giving you tasks as a person who runs errands.
From that day on, I was only given menial tasks. That's right. I'm learning a lot. I didn't mention any of this to Ken. Partly because I had made a promise to Karen, and partly because I didn't want to sound like I was tattling.
I see. Well, do your best, but don't overdo it.
With those words, he walked away. Though his words, "Don't overdo it," made me feel a bit like he saw through me. In any case, I was determined to work hard and meet expectations. Even after that, I continued to be saddled with errands, working tirelessly each day. However, it is indeed the corporate strategy department, which is considered the heart of the company. Working here, I was able to learn a lot about the company. Excuse me, may I ask you something? Here, I could quickly gather information about the company's performance, struggling departments, and projects that were doing well. Moreover, when I approached my colleagues during Amy's absence, they were kind enough to explain things to me in detail. Not only that, but they would secretly pass me compiled data, which they had put together with the help of other colleagues, based on the questions I had asked.
Since Amy can't help you, let us do this much.
They would say. Thanks to them, even while being swamped with errands, I was able to gather and analyze the information in my own way. Amy, please take a look at this. Thus, I compiled a proposal for improving operations and submitted it to Amy. Even though I was only tasked with errands, I was determined to work sincerely for the company since I had joined. I had put together this proposal, thinking of the company's best interests, even if it meant sacrificing my busy time with errands.
Don't do anything unnecessary. Just do what you're told.
Without even looking at it, she snapped at me angrily. I picked up the proposal that she had slammed down and held it out to her again. Please, just take a look at it.
It's ridiculous for a mere college dropout to try and play at being a businessman. If you can't follow your superior's orders, you're fired.
She declared this as I desperately tried to persist. I almost lost my temper at her words, but I knew I couldn't cause a scene. I tried to calm myself down, holding back my emotions. Even so, I opened my mouth to argue. Are you really a manager? What are you working for? Isn't it for the company's benefit? When I pressed her with these questions, she glared at me.
For the company? Of course. I take pride in my work. So why did they let in a college dropout like you? The company is the one disrespecting the job.
She yelled at me, her face was flushed with anger. She didn't seem to care that everyone was watching us. But
Defying your superior? That's why I hate undereducated people. You're fired. Don't ever come back here.
with that, she stormed out of the room, tossing my proposal into the trash bin on her way out. I hurriedly chased after her. Please wait, Amy.
You're persistent. This is exactly why I can't stand undereducated people.
I caught up with her in the hallway, and she glared at me as if I were a nuisance. The truth is, there's a reason why I joined this company. I was scouted by the CEO. So, getting fired might be a bit of a problem. I lowered my voice slightly and told her the fact that I hadn't shared with anyone. Her reaction to my words was,
Huh? Why would the CEO scout someone like you, a college dropout? Stop lying.
She didn't believe me at all. In fact, she even laughed at me as if I were joking. I didn't want to be judged unfairly. That's why I kept it a secret in the company, but I'm engaged to the CEO's daughter. We're getting married soon.
Oh, come on. Did you really think you could avoid getting fired by telling such a ridiculous lie?
She sneered at my words. She clearly believed that I was lying to save myself.
Keep the jokes to your face.
I froze at those words. I never expected her to bring up my appearance. It's true that I have scars on my face from the car accident. Although they're not very noticeable now, they were one of the reasons I dropped out of school. Her comment left me speechless for a moment.
I won't change my mind. Get out of here now.
She said harshly and walked away. Watching her leave, I realized I was in serious trouble. What should I do now? I started to panic.
Are you all right, Eric?
I turned around at the voice. It was Ken. He must have overheard our conversation, as his expression was stern.
Tell me everything in detail.
At this point, there was no way to avoid it. I decided to be honest and entered a nearby meeting room with him. There, I reported everything that had happened. He listened to my story in silence.
Excuse me for a moment.
No problem. At one point, his phone rang, interrupting our conversation. I overheard someone yelling,
I need to talk to you.
but he simply responded,
I'll listen later.
and hung up. Is that okay?
It's fine. Right now, you're my priority, Eric.
After I finished my story, he apologized, saying,
I'm sorry I didn't notice sooner. For now, focus on preparing for your wedding next month. I'll inform the CO.
He said this with a serious expression. 1 month after Amy declared that I was fired, the CEO's daughter's wedding was held on a grand scale. Important business partners were invited, and all the executives from the company attended. Amy was also there, invited as a guest on the bride's side.
I'm so happy right now.
Yeah, me too. Then, the reception began, and it was time for the bride and groom to enter, and I walked in with Karen. All the guests were there to celebrate with us. In the midst of it all, there was one person who looked pale. It was Amy. She noticed me and lowered her head, trembling. It seemed she finally realized that I hadn't been lying.
No way.
I thought I heard her whisper. The reception continued smoothly, aside from her pale complexion. Neither she nor anyone else approached Karen and me as we received congratulatory speeches from the guests.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce Eric's background.
Began Mitch, the CEO, and my father-in-law, as the reception entered its latter half. After dropping out of college, I sought work in statistics and analysis, areas I excelled in. I began by taking on jobs through crowdsourcing platforms, gradually building my portfolio.
At first, Eric took on projects creating management analysis materials for companies. Over time, he developed an understanding of business management and eventually started his own consulting business. Up until now, he's been working as a freelancer.
He continued, explaining to the guests that after recognizing my performance, he scouted me to join his company and that I would soon be joining as an executive vice president.
We're fortunate to have such a fine son-in-law.
He concluded, prompting a round of applause from the audience. However, Amy stood there, her face drained of color, stunned into silence. Seeing her like this, I couldn't help but smile wryly to myself. While everyone else was celebrating, she stood out, visibly shaken.
I know it's hard to ignore, but I'd like you to focus on me right now.
Karen whispered with a giggle. She was right, looking at another woman during our wedding wasn't the best idea. I turned my attention back to Karen. Seeing her beautiful smile, I felt a surge of happiness at the thought of spending my life with her. After the reception ended, the guests began to leave one by one. Amy.
Eric.
Excuse me for stopping you, but there's something I really need to discuss with you. Please come with me. I caught her just as she was about to leave and led her to a private room. Did you enjoy yourself? We put a lot of thought into the food and the production of the wedding.
Yes, it was a very wonderful ceremony.
The silence was awkward, so I tried to make small talk. Amy, still pale, responded with polite but distant words. Understanding her discomfort, I continued walking toward the waiting room. Excuse me. I've brought Amy.
Thank you, Eric.
Inside, Mitch and Karen were waiting.
Nice to meet you. I'm Karen, the daughter of Mitch Garden and Eric's wife. I've heard about you from both my father and husband.
I apologize.
Still pale, Amy finally uttered an apology. And what exactly are you apologizing for?
I'm sorry for not believing that you were marrying the CEO's daughter and for firing you because of it.
Amy answered my question, her voice trembling. I sighed deeply at her response. She still doesn't think she did anything wrong to me personally. Would you not have fired me if you believed I was marrying Karen?
Of course not.
That's not quite right. I encountered her response. It doesn't matter who I marry or who the CEO's daughter marries, it has nothing to do with the company. She looked like she wanted to say something, but remained silent as I continued. What I want you to regret is dismissing me without even considering my abilities to do the job and judging me solely based on my education. At this point, Mitch handed her a sheet of paper. It listed the names of top-tier companies, all of them known for their stable management.
Well, what is this?
She looked puzzled as she examined the document.
These are all companies that Eric consulted for.
What?
Her expression shifted from confusion to shock as she realized the scale of what was being presented.
You were blinded by your prejudice against someone with a high school diploma and overlooked a valuable asset to the company.
Mitch's words were stern but instructive. Her face suddenly reflected the realization of her mistake.
I've heard about you from my brother.
What?
Karen spoke to Amy, who was now looking quite unsettled.
When you first joined the company, you were resented by someone who didn't have a college degree, right?
Karen shared the story she'd heard from her older brother. Apparently, Amy had been unfairly accused by a colleague who assumed she looked down on them due to her higher education. Since then, she had harbored a bias against those with lower educational qualifications. Surrounded by highly educated colleagues, she had worked hard to prove herself, believing she had earned the right to lead.
That person targeted you because you had a higher degree. Now, aren't you doing the same thing by looking down on others for having a lower degree?
Amy began to cry at Karen's words. She turned to me and lowered her gaze.
I was wrong. I sincerely apologize.
She offered a heartfelt apology. I smiled at her. Amy, you are quite an outstanding person. I accept your apology, and let's consider this matter closed.
Are you sure about this?
Mitch asked me, his voice full of concern. I nodded. She is a valuable asset to this company. I said this firmly. Amy looked up at me quickly.
But I treated you so badly.
As long as you understand, it's okay. I've seen firsthand how competent you are, Amy. Because I observed her while doing the menial tasks, I noticed her strong decision-making skills and talents fit for a leader. She might not have realized it, but even the errands she assigned were managed efficiently, ensuring no time was wasted and everything was completed within working hours. Are you aware, Amy? Thanks to your attention to your team members and your appropriate guidance, the work runs smoothly.
That's not possible.
It is. That's why there's hardly anyone staying late in the corporate strategy department, and why the team's performance is so high. When my colleagues answered my questions, they often said,
Amy may judge based on education, but she's really caring.
or,
She's incredibly talented.
the people she looked after always improved, but those with less education didn't get that benefit, so the others made sure to help them instead. They did this not to undermine her, but because they wanted to support her. She was admired by her team members to such an extent. No wonder you're held in such high regard by the executive vice president. As I said this, I glanced towards the doorway where the executive vice president, Ken, was standing. She turned around, surprised, and then gave a troubled smile.
I don't think I'm ready yet. I'll have to decline that offer.
I understand. But I'll be here waiting for you to change your mind.
Ken, Karen's older brother, said this with a gentle smile. In the end, she continued working just as she had before, with no further repercussions. However, After that incident, Amy began to pay much more attention to her team members.
I've deeply reflected on what happened. I've realized that there are people like you who have the talent but couldn't pursue further education due to circumstances. I don't even look at the education section of resumes anymore.
She confided in me. In the past, she was prone to mistreating employees who didn't graduate from prestigious universities, but that behavior was now gone. Now, she judges people solely on their abilities. As a result, her team members grew rapidly in their roles, and the company's performance continued to improve. You're amazing, Amy.
Please, don't flatter me, Vice President.
Despite the fact that I have once been on the brink of being fired, I am now serving as a vice president, working sincerely under the CEO. As a former management consultant, I became the head of the corporate strategy department, working alongside Amy.
By the way, there's a project I'd really like to get your opinion on.
Sure, do you have time to discuss it now?
Yes, absolutely.
She no longer belittled me. She sought my input when necessary and treated me as an equal.
In fact, seeing your skills up close, I've come to respect you deeply, Eric.
Hearing that directly from her warmed my heart and made me feel truly recognized. Amy, your insights have been valuable to me as well. I recalled how Ken had once told me that working with her would be a learning experience for me. He was right, and I decided to ask her something I had been curious about. So, how are things with Ken? As it turned out, Amy and Ken were in a relationship. During one of my consultations with Ken, it had been Amy who called him. At that time, she had been trying to get Ken to approve my dismissal, leading to a fight between them that resulted in them not speaking for about a month.
We made up soon after that, but marriage is still a ways off.
Before the argument, she had been discussing marriage with Ken. However, after the incident, she felt she wasn't worthy of him and turned down the idea during a conversation after the wedding.
But he told me he'd wait. So, this time, I'm determined to become a woman who's worthy of him.
I see. Well, I wish you the best. I'm rooting for you.
Thank you.
She smiled at me, looking as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. As for Ken,
I'm jealous of you, Eric.
Sometimes, when we drink together, Ken would get a bit tipsy and repeatedly express how envious he was of me. Apparently, Ken was completely smitten with Amy. While he kept things professional at work, he was incredibly sweet to her in their personal life, something she had shared with me.
I want to work with Amy. Or rather, I want to marry her.
If that's how you feel, you should propose her again instead of just waiting.
I just wanted to play it cool, you know?
I couldn't help but laugh at Ken's words. I understood the desire to impress someone you love.
Don't bother Eric too much.
Mitch said with a sigh, sounding exasperated. Tonight, the three of us are having a drink together, while my mother-in-law and Karen are having a dinner.
Well, I also hope she'll join the family soon.
Mitch added with a gentle smile, known for being a devoted husband. He was famous for taking his wife on trips for their wedding anniversary and always preparing gifts for her birthday. In return, his wife was known to cook his favorite dishes regularly, regardless of the occasion. I'm certain that my in-laws are a loving and caring family. Being able to become a part of such a family made me feel truly happy. I continued to devote myself to the company as usual.
Eric, do you have a moment?
Yes, Ken. Ken, as the next in line to become CEO, was also working hard. Sometimes, we would discuss the future direction of the company together. Both Mitch and Amy watched over us with kindness.
I've decided to accept his proposal.
Congratulations. Around that time, Amy decided to accept Ken's marriage proposal. When I congratulated her sincerely, she smiled shyly and said,
Thank you.
She continued to excel in her work, and it was only a matter of time before she was promoted to director.
But my approach won't change. I'm going to keep working for the benefit of this company.
I'll do what I can to support you, even if it's just a little.
A little? Are you teasing me?
She laughed as she said that, and I smiled back. Shortly after, I was joyfully ambushed by Ken, who was over the moon with happiness.
Oh, my brother. I'm sorry, Eric.
He was just that happy. I'm also glad to have her as a friend both at work and in our personal lives. Karen supports me as a full-time homemaker. She had just made a delicious dinner for us. Karen. Is something wrong? Karen seemed a little upset by my story.
I'm not going to lose to her.
Sensing her jealousy in those words, I smiled. I then told Karen just how much I loved her. Seeing her blush deeply only made me love her more. You're just so adorable, Karen.
Stop it now.
Not long after these exchanges, she and I discovered that a new life was growing inside her. Both my parents and my in-laws were overjoyed at the news.
Ever since you joined the company, it feels like everything has been going well for us.
Mitch remarked with a smile. His words only strengthened my resolve to continue contributing to the company and supporting my brother-in-law, the future CEO, with all my efforts. A few years later,
Daddy, why do you have a scar on your face?
my beloved child asked about the scar that had always been a source of insecurity for me. For a moment, I was at a loss for words.
This scar is proof that your daddy protected me.
Karen stepped in and answered.
Wow. Then the scar is like Daddy's Medal of Honor.
Our child exclaimed with a smile. From that day on, my insecurity turned into a badge of honor. I'm so happy.
I've always thought you looked handsome.
Ken, now the CEO, responded with a grin. In return, as if to reciprocate, he proudly showed off his newborn daughter, boasting about how adorable she was. I'm really glad I joined this company.
Those are words that make me happy.
I felt a deep sense of gratitude toward my in-laws and the company, who accepted me for my talent, even without a college degree. To continue making my family proud, I was more motivated than ever to keep working hard.